Lancaster has the distinction of being both a town and a city, although it's only really a city because it's got a cathedral in it. Just about. But we're here to talk about the castle this morning, which looms above the rooftops, keeping one watchful eye on Watersons and the other on the Priory, which makes it wall-eyed. We're talking serious history here, 2,000 years of it, and then some. The remains of the Roman bathhouse are tucked away behind the Mitre House, a government building that's home to the family court, the social welfare offices, and the dreaded Atos department. The bathhouse was excavated in the 1950s, and then again, just to be on the safe side, in the 1970s. Nowadays, it's imprisoned by a railing next to the Wherry Wall. The Wherry Wall, or mound of rubble, was once part of a much larger Roman fortification, which disappeared long ago. There are a couple of options as to what Wherry meant. The first stems from the Anglo-Saxon werion, which means to guard or defend. The second is connected to the ancient Welsh name for Lancaster, Caer Werid, meaning the Green Fort. Whatever the explanation, it's been known as the Wherry Wall since it was first recorded in official documents in the 11th century, so it's stuck with it now. Over the centuries, the castle has grown into its current bloated condition. Bolted to the gatehouse is a TARDIS blue sign, which reads Her Majesty's Prison, Lancaster Castle, followed by a list of details of what will happen to anybody stupid enough to smuggle contraband inside. Red Hot Pokers are no longer involved. The castle's been a jail since 1196, although it retired from the incarceration business in 2012. It was a castle proper before then, of course, constructed by some aristocrat called Roger de Poitou. Roger the Dodger fled in 1102 after a failed rebellion against Henry I, resulting in Henry nicking the building for himself. Much like every other ill-gotten gain in this country, it's been in the hands of the monarchy more or less ever since. Each successive generation has added its own battlements, dungeons, curtain walls, towers and keeps, as and when appropriate. The gatehouse was reupholstered in 1254 by Henry III, then later replaced by Henry IV of Shakespearean fame circa 1402. At one point, the ancient pile was owned by Richard the Lionheart, who gave it to his brother, the dastardly Prince John, as a birthday present. Then there's John of Gaunt, or as Bill Shakespeare put it, Old John of Gaunt, time-honoured Lancaster. He can still be found in the niche above the gate, the first Duke of Lancaster, brother of Edward the Black Prince, father of Henry IV, grandfather of Henry V, and great-grandfather of Henry VI. He's got quite a lot to answer for, all matters considered. During the Civil War, the parliamentarians captured the castle, but instead of demolishing it, they converted it into the county jail instead. Well, waste not, want not. We could keep on with these historical tidbits for the next few hours, but we'd run out of film. However, it would be remiss of us not to mention the castle's most infamous hour, the Pendle Witch Trials. Witch trials during the 17th century were common. The reason why the Pendle Witches captured the public's imagination so much was down to Thomas Potts, the court clerk, who recorded the proceedings in his best-selling tribute to imaginative spelling, The Wonderful Discovery of Witches in the County of Lancaster. We'll be covering the Pendle Witches properly in another episode, but for now though, suffice it to say that in 1612, 10 people were hanged on Gallows Hill. That Thomas Potts and his avid fan club found it also wonderful speaks volumes about human nature. The Pendle Witches, of course, weren't the only ones to meet their ends on Lancaster's gallows. In fact, the gruesome pastime proved so popular that it earned Lancaster the nickname of the Hanging Town. Between 1762 and 1865 alone, 265 people danced the hemp fandango. Overseeing the prisoners was Thomas Cavell, the keeper of Lancaster Castle. He lived in the nearby judges' lodgings. Cavell occupied the positions of coroner, magistrate and mayor. Despite the appalling conditions he maintained for his prisoners, his memorial plaque describes him as a man so kind, so courteous. Which just goes to show you shouldn't believe everything you read. The Reverend Henry Burton, who found himself incarcerated in 1637, described Cavell as a beastly man. We suspect his was the more accurate description. Another prisoner, or rather ex-prisoner because he's long gone now, was George Fox, the founder of the Quaker movement. He was imprisoned in the castle several times over the 17th century for being considered politically dangerous. The Golden Lion was the final watering place for those marched across the town to their execution. The Pendle Witches infamously took their last draught here. One condemned teetotaler refused his. This turned out to be a mistake. If he hadn't, he'd have still been in the pub inebriated when his pardon arrived. Which just goes to show that drinking can be beneficial for your health, after all. With all this death around, the psychically inclined would expect to find the odd ghost. There are a few, although they're all rather boring and cliché, unfortunately. Several former inmates swear blind that they witnessed the ghost of a woman and a young girl wandering around their cell one morning. Nobody seems to know who they are, or rather were. Then there's the monk, well, there had to be one, who haunts the ground floor at night. He was a former inmate himself, or so it's reckoned. He leaves an icy chill in his wake, like a snail that's escaped from a fridge. One final ghost is one of those mischievous, invisible spirits who, for reasons best left to themselves, like to spend the afterlife sneaking up behind tourists and prodding various parts of their anatomy with an almost carry-on-like fervour. That's enough about Lancaster Castle for now. Time is against us. Click like, share, tell your friends about us, subscribe and join us again next week for another episode of Lancashire Footnotes.